We're going to try a new video shooting format today. Hopefully it comes in a little bit brighter. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here again. As John said, today we're going to talk about heat-related illnesses, and we're going to touch a little bit on personal protective equipment. So, this is the time of year. This is the time that we're all getting out there and we're doing those yard projects, and it's we haven't been acclimated to the heat yet, and this is when we can start to have some problems from it. So whether we are here working or whether we're at home working, these things all apply, and we need to take good care of ourselves to make sure that we don't fall victim of some of these heat-related problems. You've heard us throw out the term before, industrial athlete, and I want you all to think of that is that I talk often about that if from the day when we were little kids playing little league baseball or football or whatever, the first thing you did when you got to practice or the first thing you did before a game started was you went out there to stretch, and you practice before the season started so that you get acclimated to things, you get in shape. And I have a daughter right now that's doing 6 a.m. workouts for Castle Volleyball. Her butt's whipped. I mean, she's struggling with it. She didn't get in the shape she should have been to go to conditioning. So she should have conditioned for conditioning. But the actuality is that we're you come into work and you're industrial athletes, and we can't expect to just roll off of our couch and out of our car and into the workplace and start, with some aggressive work and not have some ill effects from that if we don't prepare ourselves right, especially out in this heat. Kind of keeping with the athlete theme, there's been some well-publicized fatalities related to heat illnesses, and these are people who are well trained, they are well conditioned, and they're out there in the heat and they're putting the strain on their bodies, and they've fallen victim to heat stress. And in the school systems they're doing a lot to try to do a better job of recognizing these things and to see the signs and symptoms, and so that they can see as these things start to approach, and they're educating people how to prepare themselves for it, and they can fend off some of these problems. Well, we need to know these things too, so that, and again, whether we're here or whether we're at home, we need to know what these signs and symptoms are so that we can protect ourselves and keep it from progressing to something that could be potentially very, very damaging. Here's some common factors that we have between, the industrial worker and athletes. First of all, protective clothing. Why is that on there? It's on there because, they're not out there, and the guys in the shop, and if you guys go in the field, you're not out there in shorts and a tank top. You're going to the beach. You're out there in, long pants and heavy boots and hard hats on sometimes, and personal protective equipment like safety glasses that limit some of the airflow and the cooling, the natural cooling of the body. That hard hat's holding that heat in. So that protective clothing is just like shoulder pads, is keeping that heat into the body and making the symptoms or the problems potentially worse. Oftentimes you're focused on the task at hand. Maybe you're focused on finishing that job instead of paying attention to the signs your body's trying to tell you. And so you think, well, I can just finish this real quick. And instead of saying, no, you know what, I really need to take a break. I need to go get in some cool air, and I need to get some fluids in my body, instead of finishing that project that you were working on. And so oftentimes it's the same thing with athletes. Job security concerns, being afraid to say, I need to take a break, or look, I'm having some trouble here and I need to get into some cool air. We shouldn't be afraid to do that, because we need to take care of ourselves. Anybody want to
Pay no
play?
attention to that. Just so you know, it wasn't me. Just popped up.
But being concerned to tell your supervisor that you need to take that break. Maybe you've already taken your break for the morning or whatever, but you still need to take that break to get those fluids in you. We'd rather have that happen than to fall out from a heat stroke. You know, my daughter last night, just a similar situation. She was came into my bedroom bawling, saying that she didn't want to go to volleyball this morning. And you know, her concern and my concern was that if she didn't go, what the ramifications might be for her making the volleyball team if she didn't go. So it's the same thing with your job. You worry about those things. Desire to succeed. You know, you want to keep pushing yourself, maybe even harder than you should. Desire to be accepted. Being macho. You know, I can take it. I'm tough. I can get out there and do it. And you know, just so you know, ladies, macho doesn't just reside in the male body. It's something that we all have inside of us that we want to prove to people that we can do it. Peer pressure, you know, we really have peer pressure in the athlete world, and hopefully we don't have a lot of peer pressure in the industrial world where people are pushing people beyond their physical limitations. That's not a good thing in any case. And then delayed thirst mechanism. You know, when you're out there in it, you know, your body kind of stops telling you you're thirsty. And what we'll learn here in a minute is that when we really need to, when we're working in those hot environments, we need to drink more than what we're thirsty for. You know, even after your thirst is quenched, you need to keep drinking fluids. So those are some comparisons that we have. Heat stroke related deaths, about 300 a year, from 79 to 98, and I don't really know why the statistics are so old, but from 79 to 98, there was over 7,000 deaths related to heat related illnesses. 1,700 deaths in 1980 alone. Must have been a particularly hot year.
I got a t-shirt that says I survived the heat wave of 1980.
See? Here you go.
I think we had like 64 days in a row that were over 100 degrees.
I was in the second grade, so I
I was in your lived in Texas. But I remember 1980.
And you can still wear that t-shirt.
Susan, that's a great question. Does it still fit? That's okay. I have plenty of clothes in my closet that don't fit. But I found this kind of interesting. You know, the media attention is a buzz every time there's a tornado, every time there's an earthquake, every time there's a hurricane. But heat-related deaths cause more deaths annually than hurricanes, lightning, tornadoes, floods, and earthquakes all combined. You know, so that's really something that we ought to really let sink in and realize that it is a big, you know, epidemic every year of people that aren't doing the right things, and it's so easily you can't avoid an earthquake. You know, it's going to happen. There's nothing you can do to prepare for it, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it from happening. It's just going to happen. But these things are things that we can prevent from happening if we just are smart and we listen to our bodies. Physiological responses to overheating. The real world translation: what happens when you get too dang hot? Okay, what's your body doing? First of all, dehydration occurs. We start losing body fluids because we're sweating more, and when you're not acclimated to the sweating, your sweating isn't very efficient, and so we're losing a lot of fluids. We're losing a lot of electrolytes in those fluids, and your body loses its ability to cool. And once you get too hot, and that's why and we'll talk about symptoms here in a minute, but when you transition from into heat stroke, oftentimes your body stops sweating. You don't have the fluids to sweat. Increased blood flow to the skin causes decrease in organ function. So that's why we get red in the heat, because the blood is trying to get to the outer layer to cool off. And so we get red, and what's that's doing is that's taking blood away from, vital organs, which causes some problems with organ function sometimes. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the heat-related illnesses. First of all, just fatigue, just general fatigue from it. And we all feel that. And has anybody felt that in the last couple of weeks as it transitioned from not being too bad and then it got into being real hot? I thanks, Susan. You're the only honest one in here. No one wants to raise their hand and say they're fatigued. But the heat wipes you out. I mean, it's a lot. Now, Paul, I know that you were more tired last night after umpiring that game in the heat than you were when it was 65 degrees. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's fatigued right now.
Is he awake? He's got the eyeballs tattooed on here. I heard people last night saying that you had your eyes closed in too. But the symptoms of the fatigue are general feeling of tiredness and fatigue, obviously. And the best thing that we can do for that is to pump those fluids in, drink the water, and maybe sports drinks, but I'll talk about that in a minute. And then rest. Your body just needs to rebuild. Heat rash, sometimes called prickly heat. I apologize, the color of the font got lost. But the symptoms of it are a red, raised rash. And how we can take care of this is practice good personal hygiene. Make sure that in this hot weather, and you go out there and you get hot and sweaty and oily, that we get that oil washed off. We take showers and keep our pores clean so that they're functioning properly and unclogged. You can just kind of see in that picture there that the sweat gland, is open, and then if we're dirty and we clog up our sweat glands, then our body can't sweat, and that sweat and that evaporation is what cools us off. So we really need to make sure that we're taking frequent showers. And it does say here to call the doctor if the rash persists, but generally speaking, this is something that goes away on its own and isn't too serious. Then we go into fainting, and obviously the signs of fainting are that you start getting a little bit dizzy, start getting lightheaded. It usually occurs like this time of year. It usually occurs when we haven't really been exposed to a lot of heat, and all of a sudden we do start exposing ourselves to heat. Your lawnmower sat in the garage unused for all winter long, and now all of a sudden the sun comes out and it heats up, and you're out there weed eating and mowing and mulching and planting flowers and doing all that kind of stuff. That's when you start getting that lightheadedness. The first aid for that is to lay the victim in a cool location horizontally with the feet elevated so the blood can get back, and if conscious, give fluids. And the treatment is basically the same as any other kind of shock. Get them cooled down. Then we've got heat cramps. Heat cramps, we've all probably experienced them from one time or another. Cramping of any of the active muscles, oftentimes in the arms and legs, and can do in the abdominal area. First aid for that is replenish electrolytes through drinking of fluids, Gatorade, that sort of thing. But I want to caution you on the Gatorade. Sometimes that, they spend a lot of money on marketing for Gatorade. We see a lot of athletes, chugging down Gatorade quite a bit. But, for the normal diet, for us to be slugging Gatorades all the time, that's way too much sugar. You know, and so we really need to make sure that we're not drinking all that sugar. There's G2 that doesn't have sugar in it. That's, you know, it's still got the electrolytes and it's still got the fluids, the water that you can benefit from without all the sugar. So, you know, the last thing we want to do is put you in a diabetic coma because we're trying to get you out of heat stroke. So be careful about that. Heat exhaustion, this would be the you know, obviously much less severe than heat stroke, but this is when your body starts telling you that you're starting to get to that point where heat stroke is imminent or heat stroke is possible. And so these are some of the things that we really need to pay close attention to. And this is time when it's time to put down the shovel and get in the house and get cooled off. But symptoms of this are nausea, start having an upset stomach, dizziness is associated with it. Sometimes you start feeling a little bit weak, just almost lethargic. Oftentimes a headache and blurred vision. Usually, and this is one of the things that separates heat exhaustion from heat stroke. Usually when you have heat exhaustion, you're sweating profusely. Okay, you're still sweating a bunch. You're really putting out the fluids. And what we'll talk about in a minute with heat stroke is, you know, that's the sweating stopped. But cold, wet, clammy, grayish skin, it's another way to tell about it. The grayish skin part is when you go to, you know, another way to say grayish skin is pale. When they start going pale, we're in the heat exhaustion zone. Sometimes you can become unconscious from it, and a lot of times that's associated with the fluid loss, and you know, it can lead to coma and death. So it's nothing to ignore. This is when your body's telling you need to do something, and we don't want to ignore it. How do we take care of it? Is place a victim in a prone position, in a cool location. If they're conscious, start pumping the fluids. If unconscious, you really need to seek medical care. Okay, so if you or one of your coworkers or one of your family members, if we progress to this point and they become unconscious, hit that phone, dial 911, get help, because if you don't get the care that they need and they don't start pumping those fluids, they're going to lead to this next step, which is really bad. We lead into heat stroke. Oftentimes, the signs and symptoms of a heat stroke are chills, restlessness, okay, start getting fidgety and don't really know why, irritability, okay, and I know that sometimes that's hard to tell normal irritability from increased irritability, but with a feeling of euphoria, okay, can come about you. Now we talked about the heat exhaustion has the pale or grayish skin. Now we've got red face skin. Okay, oftentimes generally the skin is going to be very bright red. Once we've got into this, disorientation. Okay, this is an important one for us to understand because and due to the disorientation, the people that are falling victim of this don't realize they're falling victim of it. This is, you know, once we progress to this point, this is where we're kind of counting on the people around us to say, you know, you're not acting right here. You know, you're talking funny, or you're doing weird things. I mean, that disorientation. I mean, quite honestly, it's like talking to somebody that's inebriated. You don't need to be driving home. I'm fine. Well, they don't know that they're not fine, but you know, from a normal person sitting there that's not inebriated, they can tell clearly that they shouldn't be driving. It's a lot like that. Hey, you need to get in the air conditioning, get out of the heat. I'm fine, I'm going to finish this job or whatever. Well, they don't know what they're saying. So it really takes somebody that kind of knows them and knows that their behavior is not quite right. hot and dry skin, but that's not a given all the time. Oftentimes, once they get to this, you are going to get collapse, you are going to get unconsciousness, and probably a little bit of convulsions. If you don't take care of this problem promptly and get 911, get the medical care they need, this heat stroke will and can very easily lead to death. So this is something not to mess with at all. It's time to get help. The first aid for it is first word there is immediate. You know, don't wait around. Don't take chances. But be very aggressive, cooling the victim's body. You know, using wet cloths. Get them immersed in, you know, a cool bathtub or a swimming pool, something if you can safely do that. And alcohol wipes, that helps cool the body. That's a real good thing. I don't know if any of you, when your kids were having fevers, but if you use alcohol wipes on their forehead and on the back of their neck and stuff, that evaporation of the alcohol will help cool them. It kind of mimics the body's sweating purposes. And then transport to the emergency or to the hospital and get emergency medical treatment as soon as possible. Dial 911, get them the help they need. As we just talked about, we really have to watch out for each other. You know, we in these hot, we should always be anyway, but in these hot work environments, that's even more important. You know, if it's 100 degrees out there and you're going to go out and do yard work, you might ask a family member to, even if they're not going to help you, to at least go out there and observe you and sit and drink iced tea while you're doing it, so that they keep an eye on you. There's a lot of really good iced tea drinkers out there. So, but make sure that you see somebody acting silly, funny, something that's not right. You know, take action. Don't take it seriously. You guys know that. You now know, if you didn't already know, that that's one of the symptoms that lead into some pretty serious stuff. So, you know, it's something to take seriously. Some indirect health effects that are related to heat-related illnesses is reduced work performance, and that's oftentimes because people are tired. So, you know, for you supervisors in the room, that means that giving somebody maybe a little more frequent breaks so that they can cool off and their bodies can get used to it might actually increase performance, or at least be more performance than if you just let them out there and not give those breaks. Fatigued workers perform with reduced accuracy and efficiency. Increased accidents, statistics show, and it holds true with cook companies, it holds true with, you know, a lot of other customers I work with. In these high heat situations, the accidents, they go up, they rise. Not only do you have the heat-related accidents, but you have the accidents because somebody's taking a shortcut because they were tired, they were fatigued, they didn't want to go get the right tool, you know, all those type of things. So we really have to pay attention to that, so that we're not asking people to do more than they should be able to do. And maybe we do need to adjust our expectations a little bit because of the heat and because of those factors. It might save the next workers' comp accident by giving them that break. Reproductive problems, you know, for females in the reproductive years or pregnant, the heat is very stressful on that, on the unborn fetus, and so you need to be cognizant of that. And heart and lung strain, you know, most healthy adults their hearts can handle the increased heat for the most part, and the lung issues. But you know, there's a lot of people out there that have heart and lung, kidney, and circulatory problems, and that heat just magnifies everything. So, you know, if you've got that family member that's already had that mild heart attack, you know, 10 years ago, it's probably not time for them to be out when the heat really rises. The cold's bad for them too, but the heat's bad for them. So those are some indirect health effects of high heat scenarios. These are some predisposing factors that cause some people to fall victim of heat-related illnesses. That maybe statistically they're more prone to it than the average person. People who are very small, tiny people, they can be a little more predisposed to heat-related problems. Definitely, being overweight can lead to that. Your body works harder; it's building more internal heat, and then so all that external heat is a problem, a magnifier. If you're over 40 years old, then we become more sensitive to the heat. Our bodies don't deal with the heat quite as well. We don't sweat as efficiently as younger people do. So we have to make sure that we're understand that. And just the fact that you're getting a little bit longer in the tooth, you may not be able to handle what you were able to handle at one time. If you've had a previous heat illness, it makes you more susceptible to another heat illness. Okay? So if anybody in the room, and I'm not asking, don't raise your hands, but if anybody in the room has had some heat exhaustion or heat stroke, you've gotten that far, then you really need to watch it because you're more susceptible to getting it again. Heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, being inactive, and then going out and working in the heat, that's a problem, and that lack of physical activity or increased physical activity, as the case could be, that we're doing more than we normally do, but now it's hot and we're doing more than we normally do. And basically, sooner or later, we will all be vulnerable to heat-related illnesses. It'll affect all of us at one time. Just, this is kind of almost a silly picture here, but you've got external heat sources like hot weather, radiant heat sources. Those are some ways that we heat up. We've got internal heat sources, just the muscle activity inside your body is building heat. That's energy. You're a power plant and you're building that heat. So you got heat generating inside and you've got heat generating outside. And then the evaporation of sweat, our cooling system, that's our sweat. And that's how the body works. Some of the ways that we can control external heat sources is that we can control it at the source by replacing or isolating the heat source. Finding out those sources, those things that are pumping heat out, and either isolate them into another place or replace them with equipment that doesn't generate as much heat. Or we can block or basically put a barrier between the worker and the heat source. Just like an umbrella in the shade, or to make shade, we can do that in the workplace too by putting I don't know where you guys can get them. Maybe you can find like an insulated panel somewhere. Not sure where you can come up with that, but those would be great barriers between those hot heat sources. And you may not think about it. I was sitting at the ballpark the other night, and I was sitting in my lawn chair. It's a little bit warm, but not too unbearable. And one of my buddies decided to pull up and screw around with me, and he pulls his car up to where his bumper touched the back of my lawn chair. And he thought it was funny, that he was almost going to hit me. Well, I didn't care about that because I knew he wasn't going to hit me, but his car was hotter than crap sitting in my back, so I made him pull it up, back it off. And think about all those pieces of equipment out there that normally put off heat, but and maybe in the middle of November it's not a problem, but in the middle of August when it's already hot and the ambient temperature is hot, and then that piece of equipment, so we can maybe isolate people from those sources. Internal source controls, we said the internal source of energy is that muscle movement and the muscle activity. So what kind of things can we do to reduce that muscle activity so we reduce that heat internally? Is we can reduce the workload on the body, whether through improved ergonomics, getting help, providing assistance to people, increase relief time, so, increase those moments between the tasks so that they have that break moment so that they can, their bodies can keep up. And sometimes it's just slow down, if normally, the production is, we pump out 100 widgets a day, maybe in the high heat situations, maybe we say, you know what, we're okay with you only getting 85 out today because we need you to slow down. So, that's a lesson to supervisors to understand that in those high heat, we need to kind of allow some slowing down so we don't have problems. Obviously, provide adequate water and find ways to actively cool the body and get acclimated to the heat. And that really is a true thing that happens in your body. Your body does get acclimated. And so, kind of trying to prepare your body to work out in the heat. Maybe, you start out, you work a couple hours out in the heat, and then the next day you can work a little bit more and more and more, but pretty soon you build up. And then all of a sudden you're used to working out the heat, and then you go on vacation and you sit on your couch for a week, and then you got to build yourself back up. You do, just in a week's time, your body can lose that acclimation. So we have to keep making sure that we get acclimated. Ensure good nutrition and rest. One of the things that, and we hit hard on this at Gibbs, is that, making sure you prepare your body the night before. If you're coming in here and you know it's going to be hot, it's not time to be out drinking beer till 1 in the morning. Sodas dehydrate you, beer dehydrates you, alcohol dehydrates you. All of those things are not ways to prepare your body, but you should be loading your body with fluids, drinking the water, eating the fruits, getting good rest, eating a lot of protein, high protein meals. Don't eat a lot of processed food that has all that sodium in it. That's counterproductive to the next day's work. So part of being that industrial athlete is not just what you do while you're at work during the day, but it's what you do the night before to prepare your body for it. And, last summer was a booger. It was hot. And I told people, I said, I don't care if your normal routine is to go and stop at the bar and have, drink a 6-pack before you go home, or take a 6-pack home and drink it. But right now, in the middle of this horrible heat, it's not the time to do that, because you're going to fall more victim the next day to heat-related illnesses. So just preparing that body the night before is very important. We want to wear loose clothes. Cotton's good because it helps, that it allows for the sweat to absorb, or it allows for the sweat to evaporate. There's lots of different cooling type of materials out there now, Moisture Awakening and the Under Armour and the Nike Dry Fit and all that. Those are good things. They allow that sweat to evaporate out, or to be drawn away from the body and evaporate so that it can do its cooling job. This might sound kind of silly, and I realize I'm in a room full of office people right now, but we want to make sure that they're laundering their clothes often, because just those oils and stuff that get into the clothes, they will cause the sweat to not be able to evaporate and get off the skin as much as it should. Maybe a normal cotton, shirt, but it's a little bit saturated in oil because it hasn't been washed as often as it should be, is going to prevent that cooling process in the body. I already kind of talked about acclimatization. Here's some things that, if you're having trouble getting used to the heat, and you really can't get used to it, there may be an underlying medical condition that's, preventing you from it. You should be getting acclimated within a few days of being in it. If you're not, then there might be some problem that's preventing you from doing that. So maybe a good idea to go see your doctor and make sure that everything's good. If you have questions about heat and how it affects your body, you can go see your doctor. Are there any questions about heat-related illnesses? Any questions that aren't on the easy exam that I've got in front of me? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was done. Just obviously drink plenty of water. The electrolyte drinks are good. We talked about the staying away from the sugar. And they say normally that you don't really need the Gatorade if you go out and mow your grass and that's all you do. I mean, your normal diet should replace the electrolytes enough. There's really not anything wrong with drinking too much electrolytes other than, you know, like we said, the sugar. Caffeinated beverages, I said it once, I'll say it again. Coke, Diet Coke, you know, all the carbonated, caffeinated beverages, they cause dehydration. They quench your thirst, the immediate, the acute, but they are damaging to the chronic, okay? Water is always the best option. They say 1 cup or 8 ounces every 20 minutes is about what we should be getting in our bodies. And you know, fruits and vegetables are full of water, so those are great things to snack on when it's hot. And maximize the amount you drink. They say that, I've heard it enough times that I guess I have to believe it, but they say that like the water that you drink shouldn't be too cold when it's really hot. That's what is satisfying to me though, is the cold water. And then make sure that it's not lukewarm. We don't want to put anything in the body that's going to generate more heat. We talked about eating healthy already. That's one of the best defenses, is just a well-balanced diet. Fans are great, but understand that the fan doesn't necessarily fix all. That if it's above 75-80% humidity, those fans start losing their cooling effects. And we also, you know, at times you could be, depending on how hot it is or where the source of the fan is blowing from,